Hi, Holly Stokes, the brain trainer here. I help people train their brain out of the negative habits into the positive ones that support them so they can create what they want. Well, when we talk about goals, why is it that we have a love-hate relationship with goals? We know we need them, we know they can be useful, help us move forward, but we find ourselves avoiding them, even dragging our feet, or ultimately not following through. There's some different ways that goals can actually set us up to fail if we are not paying attention to specifically what the brain is running in the background. So follow me on this short video and I'll share with you understanding what your mind is doing that relates to whether you're following through or falling off the wagon. Welcome to the problems with goals. So why is it that even though we know what we need to do, we just can't seem to make ourselves do it? Well, there are some ways that your brain could be running things in the background that relate to what you're following through or how you're falling off the wagon. So let's go ahead and explore what's going on, creating the disconnect between I know what to do, I just can't follow through. It all starts with the goal setting cycle. Now here's the typical goal setting cycle. We pick point A, that's where we are now. Point B, that's where we want to get to. And everything in between point A and point B are the action steps we need to take to make point B happen. So we can get very clear. Now, if you're savvy with SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and on timeline, great. And then maybe you're even detail oriented and you put it in your planner. Okay, now what? Well, then we start, okay, this is what I want. We get focused. We might even be really motivated at first. And then we start working that goal. Okay, I'm gonna do it this time. We give ourselves that pep talk, or maybe we just came back from a motivational seminar. I can do it. Yes, I can get it this time. And we start working toward that goal. And then a couple days roll by and life happens. Something comes up. We put it off to the weekend. I'll get to it later. I'll get back to it another time. And then what happens? A couple more days roll by, a week rolls by. We find ourselves not following through. And finally, we start to resolve, maybe now's just not a good time to focus on this goal. So what happens then? Well, we take that and we tuck that goal into the graveyard with all of the goals of the past. Now, before we tuck it into its graveyard, we give it a proper eulogy. And, oh, I'm just lazy. I should have paid more attention. I'm not disciplined. And finally, we resolve to let it go, tucking it into the graveyard. But this is not the end of the goal setting cycle. No. What happens then is the next time that we go to set a goal, we get visitations from the ghosts of goals past. You're just lazy, undisciplined, unmotivated. Oh, I've heard this one before, right? And your mind is running this chatter in the background that takes the wind out of your sails even before you get off the ground. So what can we do about this? How is this? There's some ways that our mind is interacting with our motivation, what we're following through or what we're not following through on, and some ways that we actually get tripped up to fail. So here's the problems with goals. Now, the very first way that we get tripped up is they're just not clear. If we haven't thought it through, if we haven't dialed it in specifically, we don't know what we're going to do when, well, that's the number one way most of us fall off the wagon. So dial it in, get clear. If you're savvy about it, make SMART goals, right? Oh, I know, so you're rolling your eyes into the back of your head. Well, it's just about clarity, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and on a timeline. Okay, got that covered. Now, the second way that we get tripped up is with rigid ideas of success and failure. And now this relates to what we just talked about, goals in the graveyard. But another way to think of it as well is to think about how we use the term goal in other areas of life as well, like a sports field. So there's a picture here of a soccer field, and you've got this vast green playing field, but you can kick the ball down the field all you want, but it doesn't actually count unless you get that ball into the goal. And so we have these ideas of rigid success and failure. If we're not 100% with our goals, we can feel like we're failing even though we're making progress. And then what happens? Well, then we go into why I'm just not following through. I didn't make it 100%. I ate that cookie, or I didn't exercise as much as I wanted. And then that starts number 3. We start going down the downward spiral. Oh, maybe our self-talk starts acting up. Oh, you just can't follow through. You're undisciplined, unmotivated. And then how do we feel once that self-talk has started to speak up? Well, then it starts to demotivate us. We even feel defeated. And then it's even harder to start taking that action because of how we feel about it, right? Now, the 4th point is that willpower and motivation don't last. So willpower, great. You might be good for a few days, or I'm just not going to eat sugar anymore, and you stay on track for a few days, but then a few more days roll by, and then it's almost like it comes with a backlash. Well, we can talk about that more in the following videos. But motivation, so we might start out feeling motivated, but then, what happens? Life happens, gets in the way, motivation wears off. So even though we started with motivation, we're not keeping or maintaining that level of intensity to actually make that goal happen. So the real reasons that we don't follow through are actually wired into our brain. Lack of motivation, self-sabotage, procrastination, or underlying patterns, habits and patterns of the brain that are getting in the way and keeping us from actually following through and creating what we want. If you want to change the brain habits getting in your way, self-criticism, lack of motivation, procrastination, self-sabotage, then go to the website, thebraintrainerllc.com, sign into the form on the right to get access to the rest of the Master Your Brain e-course, where I'll share with you the tips to making your goals stick and changing your brain habits and patterns, shifting your mind from sabotage to success. And you can learn to master your brain for motivation, confidence, and focus. It's really about getting your brain on board with your goals so you can enjoy a better life today. And I'll see you on the other side.